Welcome back, everyone. So in the previous video, we've been creating a strafing system using a pretty cool blend space. We made sure our character was able to increase its speed while left shift was down. And in this one, we'll be introducing a pretty simple aiming mechanic using layers. So let's get to it. So go to your anim graph of your animation blueprint. Okay, down at the root. What we will do here, I'm gonna rename my state machine base layer. Okay, and then I'll create a new state machine next to it that will be named, say, just layer, maybe. Okay, and now. Okay, so what we'll do first is we'll just create what will be happening in the layers, and then I'll explain how this is gonna work. So go to your layer machine here, and what we'll do is, once again, we'll be creating an idle state, which is gonna be handling the layers while we're in the idle state of our state machine, because that's just the state we're in by default. And then we'll be creating a state, another one, a second one, that in turn will be named aim. Okay, and then we want a transition back from aim to idle. Okay, and now there's one thing we're gonna have to handle, is that we're doing something that will actually create the transition. Make sure that in our layer we switch from idle to aim. What I suggest to do, my suggestion is that we use the right mouse button that when pressed will be aiming, and when release we just stop aiming. Okay, we'll go back to the transition conditions in a moment. What I want to focus on right now is the implementation of the actual layers. So what we want to do is that we want to take that base layer that is going to be the one providing the main motion of the character, and then the state machine here is going to have to override some components, some bones of our character in certain situations. So this is why I've created an idle state, which is going to be an animation played on top of the idle we have when we're in the idle state. And then when we start aiming, then the motion of our character will still be playing underneath, but then starting from a certain bone, the animation of running, I think for the walk, it's he's holding the rifle that is next to his hips. Then we'll be making sure that the character is aiming. So to do this, we're gonna have to merge these two state machines together, forming what we call a layer system. And then in turn, this simple operation will output the result to the output pose. So what you can do is just from the base layer state machine here, drag a new pin, and then we will look for it's called layered blend per bone. Okay, and then automatically your first state machine is going to be plugged to the base pose, and then you want to plug the layer state machine to the blend poses 0. The blend weight you can leave at 1, and now. So let's connect these the layer blend bone to the output pose, and then click on the layered here. And what we want to do is just to do a simple setup over here. So just expand the layer setup. Once again, 0. You want to click on branch filters over here. Expand this, and then what we will be doing is that our character. Let me show the, you have bone names. Okay. What we'll be doing is that we'll assume that the legs will keep, running we're moving around, and starting from spine 01, we'll be overriding the animation from the base layer by the animation from the layer set machine, the blend pose. Okay, so what happens here is that if you remember to, it's going to be case sensitive. So type spine 01, small letters. Blend depth has to be set to 1. And I think that's everything you need at the moment. And what it does is that from spine 01, with a weight of 1, so fully overriding, the base layer will be replaced by that layer animation. All right, and now we're gonna have to handle the aiming mechanic by listening to our mouse. So in the previous video, we've been directly reading from the left shift key. And now in this case, we could be using directly the right mouse button, but I want to show you something else, which is defining a new input mapping in the project settings to create an action that will have its own name, and then you can directly use that action in your character blueprint. So click on Edit and then Project Settings. Let me show you that window here, and you have to scroll all the way to Input over here, and then you have action mappings or axis mappings. So expand the action one, and you already have Jump and Reset VR. We want to create a new one that we will be calling Aiming. And then over here you have all the possible inputs, but what you can do is actually to click on that, where have I gone? Okay, you can click here, see it says select the key value, so left click once, and then if you right click, it will, it's like a listen to key. So if I click again and press on E on my keyboard, it will, it's waiting for my input. So right mouse button over here, and that's it. You can close the window. Remember the name, it's called Aiming, okay? Now we'll switch to our third person character blueprint here. And what you can do is right click in an empty space, and if you type Aiming, you will find it under Action Events. So, and it's the exact same thing as the left shift. See, it has the same outputs, but it's just another way to, maybe it's a little bit more organized, because if you have left shift here, maybe it's not really readable. Whereas when you have input action aiming, it's pretty easy to understand what does block does. Now what we'll be doing is that when we press aim, we want to set a variable that it's in turn going to be used and listened to in the transition condition from idle to aim in our layer state machine. So we're going to go ahead and create that variable, which is a boolean, and we'll call this one aim button down. Now you want to drag this in the press here, and when it's pressed you want to set it to true, and when it's released you want to set it to false, so just leave it unchecked. Okay, save this, compile. Okay, and that's all we'll need to do in here for now. So let's switch to our character, so animation blueprint, sorry, and on the event graph, we're gonna have to access to that aim button down here and set our own variable that is in turn gonna be used in the transition conditions. So there's a tricky part here, is that we're gonna have to have access to the variables from the third person character. The problem is we cannot do it directly if we get the instance of the pawn owner, which is, so a character inherits from a character, from the pawn, sorry. So we're gonna have to cast, which is some sort of a conversion from pawn to third person character. There's a pretty easy way to do it. Is just drag something from your return value here and type cast to third-person character. Okay, we just need to, actually there's gonna be, no, okay, we can actually plug it from here, okay, to make sure it's executed. Now, as a third-person character, if you drag a pin from here and type aim button down, you will see that we have access to the variables we've been creating before, and we want that to be get the button down variable, and in turn this will be promoted to a variable that we can call aim or aiming. All right, set aiming and connect these two execs together. Okay, now what happens is that when the character blueprints sets aim button down to true, our animation blueprint sets aiming to true. Now go to your animation graph, and in the transition from idle to aim, we can drag the aiming, and then when you are going back, so you're stopping the aiming, you can just drag, so control drag for a get, drag a pin out of it and type not. So when it's not aiming, just go back to idle. And now what we need to do is obviously to assign some animations to our layer states, because right now, you know, we have a T-pose because we don't have anything in these two states. So in the idle one, I'm gonna filter idle. I'm gonna be using a breaker. I want the one, no, that's not the one I want. I think that's the, oops, sorry. What did I do? Strafing system, okay. I'm gonna use this one, the hip break 1. Then you'll see the power of using layers, which is pretty cool. And then in the aim one, we'll use the, I think I had it, rifle iron sight, yep. Okay. Let's compile and play, and now my character is just looking around, and if I right click on the mouse, he's aiming and then he stops aiming if I release the button. Now what I wanted to share as well is that I've on purpose I've chosen an animation, an idle breaker, which is, you know, gonna be playing over and over again. But the cool part is that, you know, if you start walking, the idle animation from your layer is still playing on top of your motion, which means that your character feels like his, you know, sometimes in games you have pretty cool idles, and then let's just say you have a breaker where, you know, is stretching his arms or scratching his neck. Then if you start moving, most of the time, you know, it will cancel the animation and start moving. There's no reason why your character could not walk while, you know, stretching his neck. It doesn't have to interrupt any animation, and that's what I wanted to show you here. Let's just say the character looks right, and then I start moving, and he keeps looking right, because why not? Same thing, if you stop moving, then, you know, every action that he's currently performing on the upper body is just still playing. So it's a pretty cool feature. And now, of course, on top of this, we have the aiming mechanic, and it's pretty okay. Now, I'm not gonna create a blend space for aiming because that's a topic for another video. But I wanted to do something pretty cool, is that I want to make sure that when I'm aiming, the camera is just zooming in to bring it much closer to the character, just like you have in third-person shooters when you're aiming. So sometimes you would have a view from the iron sights, but I'll do something much more like over the shoulder. So to do this, what I'm going to do is we're gonna be creating another, so not a camera, but a spring arm, so a camera boom. And then when we aim, we'll make the camera move from the default spring arm to the one that we're about to create, and then vice versa when I release. So to do this, in your third-person viewport over here, what you can do is that I will rename the camera boom here. I'm gonna call this camera default. All right, and I'm gonna duplicate this. The shortcut is Ctrl W, and this one is gonna be called camera aiming. Okay. So for testing purposes, I'm just gonna parent the camera to the aiming, which will make the camera follow that spring arm when I'm gonna play the game, and with this I will be testing the framing and make sure it's the one I want. If your camera has disappeared, it's probably because here you have some transform. So just go back to 0, and what we will do actually is that on the aiming spring arm here component, you want to reduce the target arm length to something like 80. We have something very close to the camera, and then I think it's the target offset. Offset it on the side, and then we want something slightly up as well, so something like maybe 20. All right, let's see how it looks now. Oh yeah, so we want something really higher than this. Okay, I need to stop the game. Let's try 50. Looks decent. All right, yeah, I'm gonna just offset it a little bit more on the right. Let's give it 70. And we'll say it's good enough. All right, we're gonna save this. Just reassign your camera to the default spring arm, and then we'll be handling the camera motion between these two spring arms in the character blueprint in the event graph. Right, now this is how we're gonna handle that transition between those two spring arms. Now we've already made sure that when I was pressing right mouse, then I was setting these two variables to either true or false. And I'm gonna be able to keep doing some other things, and namely switching the camera from one spring arm to the other. All right, so to do this, there's something pretty cool, a method pretty powerful, which is called attach component to component. You want to remove the mesh here, and as the target, that's actually the camera, get follow camera, and the parent will be, in that case, the new spring arm we've created, which was called camera aiming. So if you type aiming, you will have get camera aiming. So this is the spring arm that we want to that one is going to be the parent of the camera when we're aiming. And if when we stop aiming, let's duplicate that function. You can duplicate the follow camera as well, because that's going to be the component we will be targeting. But as the parent here, we want to go back to the default spring arm. Right. Make sure you connect the execs here. Let me reorganize this very quickly. And you want to switch everything to keep world over here. Now, and the last thing we want to do is to make sure that the camera also moves to the position we've assigned previously. And to do this, it's pretty simple. We have a method called moveComponent2. Connect both of the execs over here, and then the component is the follow camera, right? So you can just duplicate it from anywhere and plug it to component. And that's all we need. So once again, if I'm aiming, I make sure the camera the follow camera is parented to the newly created spring arm called camera aiming, and then I'm moving the camera to it. And then when I stop aiming, I'm going back to the previous settings, reassigning the camera under the default spring arm and moving it back to the default position. Let's see if I've done everything according to plan. Let's play. Now this is the default view. If I aim, my view is just zooming in. Release, I go back to the previous setting. Now one last step would be to add a crosshair, but that would be something for a next video, I guess. Alright guys, that's all I had for today. There's plenty of pretty useful stuff in that video, but I wanted to do some kind of an overview. We'll be returning to some of these topics in future videos, and we'll also go deeper with some of them. If the video was useful, if you have any questions, any problems, just leave a comment. I'm always happy to read you. All the best, stay safe, have fun, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.